Good morning again. You're all doing well. A few years ago, Abby, Mike, and I went back to Iowa to my dad's house for the 4th of July weekend, spent time with him and my two older brothers. And when we go back to Iowa, we stay at my dad's house, and also my older brother, his wife, and 3 kids stay there as well, so it's a good, packed house. And on the actual 4th of July, we're all getting around, we're eating breakfast, taking showers, getting ready for the day. And a few years ago, when my mom was still alive, my dad bought the life alert thing, just in case if she ever got hurt or something, she'd be able to call 911. But also with the system is like a carbon monoxide detector as well. And we discovered that this morning. Because we were eating our breakfast, all of a sudden this loud alarm is going off, being like, warning, warning, carbon monoxide detected, emergency services are on their way. And we're like, that still works? We're like you've been paying for that? He's like, yeah. He's like, we're just kind of like, well, what should we do? And then all of a sudden this voice comes over, it's like, hello, is anybody there? We're like, it talks to us? We're like, yeah, we're here. She's like, carbon monoxide's been detected. The fire trucks and ambulances are on their way. Like, you need to get out of your house. We're like, okay. It's like there's a lot to process at one moment. And so we just kind of sit there like, okay, maybe we'll finish eating first and then and then she's like, hello, are you still there? We're like, yeah. She's like, a lot firmer this time. She's like, you need to get out of the house now. Get out, go. We're like, oh, okay, voice. Like, all right. And so we gather, we get out, I still grab my cup of coffee, like I need my coffee in the morning. We make our way outside, and we're really blessed to live in America. Within 5 to 10 minutes, we have 2 fire trucks and an ambulance outside our house. And the fire truck comes, and they're able to detect, yep, there's carbon monoxide, you guys definitely need to stay out of the house. They're like, unfortunately, we have to wait for a person from the gas company to come to verify where the leak's coming from, because they're like, our detectors aren't sensitive enough to figure that out. And so they're like, it's going to be at least 45 minutes to an hour. So we're like, cool. This is the 4th of July. It's you got to be understanding it's a holiday. They don't have somebody at the beckoning call to come instantly. So we hang out with some firefighters for about an hour on my dad's front lawn. And then eventually our hero comes, the guy from the gas company, and he's able to take his little detector and go through the house, and they find out it's the water heater, it's got a leak. So they shut it off, all right, open up the windows, you gotta let it air out for at least an hour, and then you can go back inside. So of course, we're like, well, he doesn't have a working water heater, and it's Saturday or a Sunday, it's a weekend, and so there's no way he's gonna get this replaced for a number of days. But luckily for us, we were there only 2 more days, and then we were heading back to Pennsylvania. And so we work it out, and eventually, I think within a week, my dad has a functioning water heater again, and everybody is safe. But in those moments, it was quite jarring to be just kicked out of your house by this unbeknownst carbon monoxide. It's odorless, you don't really feel the effects of it until it's getting serious. And you're just you're out of your house, you can't go in there, and then you're dependent on the firefighters coming, and they're only able to do a little bit, and they're all right, now we gotta wait for the next guy to come to figure out where the problem actually is. And then when they find the problem, it's still not resolved. You have to continue waiting. And now we're waiting for the appliance guy to come with the new water heater. There's a lot of waiting in life with our problems and situations we're dealing with, and then we have to put our hopes in somebody else to fix our problem because we're not able to do it. We couldn't have figured out where the carbon monoxide was coming from without that sensitive detector. Have you ever been in a situation in life where you're going through a difficult season, where it's you were dependent on somebody else fixing the problem, or you're in a season of having to wait? Maybe you're in between jobs and you're just throwing out your resume and doing interviews, but isn't that the worst? After you have an interview, and they're we'll be in touch. And then you wait. You patiently wait for a response. Or maybe you've had an injury or a surgery, and there's a lot of waiting with that, right, Patty? In physical therapy, it's you have to wait. Eventually you're gonna have your mobility back. Eventually you'll feel better. But it's there's that patiently waiting and going to therapy, and life is full of waiting. And so the question we're going to be looking at today as we are continuing our journey through the book of Isaiah. So we're looking at the second half. And Ryan kind of laid the context for this last Sunday. And in this part, the Israelites, they have been exiled from the promised land. The Lord has been using Isaiah to proclaim to them, to turn back, to repent, to turn back to the Lord and be obedient, but they ignored his warnings. And so they were kicked out, just like we were removed from my dad's house from Life Alert, so the Israelites were removed by the Babylonians and the Assyrians. And so then the Israelites were in this state of just confusion and pain and anguish, being like, Lord, where are you? Why didn't you come to our rescue? Why didn't you save us? And so they're just in the state of confusion and pain. And this is where Isaiah, we're going to be starting in Isaiah 40, is beginning to speak into those people, to encourage them, to tell them to have hope, have faith, that the Lord is still doing something. And I think there's a lot we can relate with the Israelites in this state. Whether we look at the world around us, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering. And I know a lot of us Lord, we want you to come back. Where are you? We need you to show up and do something. This is the same kind of pain and anguish that I believe the Israelites were going through during the exile period. So my big question that I'm asking today is, how should God's people respond when they are in a difficult situation? Whether it's something going on in your personal life that you're really struggling with, or maybe you just get consumed with the thoughts of the things on the global scale. There's wars going on, there's famine, there's fires going on. There's so much things. When we feel that on our shoulders, we're like, Lord, what is going on? What is your purpose? What is your plan? How do we find hope in the world? And I think these words in Isaiah can really encourage us. And so the first thing that we'll look at in the first part, verses 1 through 11, is we respond by having hope. We got to begin there. So Isaiah 40, verse 1, says, comfort for my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. So we see at the beginning that, comfort is coming for Israel. It's your debts, your sins have been paid, they are taken care of. But now just know that hope is coming. Peace is coming. Continues in verse 3. A voice of one calling, in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. If you recall back, if you're here during Christmas, I actually preached on this passage, and we were referencing John the Baptist coming. But he was laying the path for Jesus coming. But also for the Israelites here, he's telling them to be prepared, to be active, that the Lord is going to come back again, that even during the time of the exile, that they should be making preparations. They shouldn't be idle, but they should be in motion, doing something, preparing for the return of the Lord. And at the end of verse 5 it says, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. This is going to happen. And then 6 through 8, Isaiah is kind of crying out, what should I say? He's like, these people have been ignoring me, and they're not turning back. They're why would I continue to preach to them when they have ignored me all the time? And at the end of verse 8 says, the grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. So he should have hope that the word of God will continue on, that it will not falter. And then he goes on to talk about how we should be shouting the good news to not only Jerusalem, but to the world. And here is the message that we should be shouting in verses 10 and 11. It says, see, the sovereign Lord comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. And I love this passage because we see these two different characteristics of the Lord, and it's kind of described by his arm. In verse 10, it talks about how he rules with a mighty arm, about how his judgment and power is going to come. But then in verse 11, that same arm is described that he's going to gather the lambs in his arm. We see his tenderness and compassion as well for his people. And so we just see these two pictures of the same God, that when he returns, he's going to come with power and majesty to protect his people, but then he's also going to gather us up lovingly and with tenderness. And so in this section, the Lord is trying to remind the Israelites to have hope, that he wants his people to trust him, that he's got a purpose and a plan for them, that he's going to return, that his word is eternal, that he is going to protect them. So he's trying to rekindle this passion of hope and faith in his people, and it took an extreme thing of the exile to kind of wake them up, to bring their attention to their great need in the Lord. This rekindling needed to take place. When Abby and I first bought our house in Chambersburg, we bought it and moved in April in the springtime. And the way our house is heated, it has a gas fireplace. And so in the springtime, we don't need it. We don't need that heat coming out. And so I turned off the gas and just shut it down. Then, as the seasons change, fall comes around, and I'm like, all right, let's see if we can fire this thing back up. And so I make sure the pilot light's on, and I make sure the gas is turned on. I'm pressing the ignite button, and nothing's happening. So I'm Googling the model we have, trying to figure out a manual, or maybe there's a tutorial on YouTube. I'm just trying everything, but I can't figure it out. And so I need some assistance getting this fire relit, because it's not in my wheelhouse to know how to do that. And so I learned that not every company that sells a gas fireplace is going to service a gas fireplace. So I call them, yeah, we got this model. Oh, we don't sell those, so we don't service those. I was all right, cool. And so I just had to keep calling around before I finally found somebody who's oh yeah, we'll service anything. We'll get one of our guys out there. And he came, and it was really dusty. So he was vacuuming it out. And then he was looking at all the connections, making sure everything is tightened. And he was adding some extra steel wool and things to make it look nice and pretty. And then he turned it back on, pressed the igniter a few times, and boom, he got it working. He was able to, even though it's a gas fireplace, in a way, he had to rekindle it. He had to make sure that it was clean and working properly. He's able to relight it again. And I think with our own spiritual walk, sometimes we might drift away from the Lord. Our faith might get a little dusty. We kind of lose focus. We kind of get into some habits and things, and just kind of be content in where our life really is, whether it's good or bad. And we need to make sure that we are constantly checking our spiritual fire, to make sure that it is lit, that we are passionate about the Lord, that if we do see things getting dusty, that we're willing to get in there and clean it up and look at the truth of who God is, and that he is our true hope and salvation and love in our lives. And so I ask you, do you need to have the hope of God rekindled in your life? And then we can have great confidence that even in the darkest seasons, we can have hope that God will show up, that he's going to return. His word is eternal, and he wants to guide us and protect us. He's got power, he's got tenderness, he's got everything we need to stay focused and to endure the ups and downs of life. And I'm intentional. I say the ups and downs. We often think of, we only need God in the low parts. No, it's even when we're doing well, we need to humble ourselves and know, no, this is only because of the Lord. We need him just as much, and we can't let our pride or confidence overwhelm us, but to continue to lean into him. So we move on in verses 12 to 26. So we have hope because the Lord is incomparable to anything. And so when seasons come where we need the Lord, we can have hope in him, and we can have this hope because he is completely unique. There is nothing else like him. 12 through 17. I love these verses. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, or with the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens? Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on the scales and hills in a balance? Who can fathom the spirit of the Lord, or instruct the Lord as his counselor? Whom did the Lord consult to enlighten him, and who taught him the right way? Who was it that taught him knowledge, or showed him the path of understanding? Surely the nations are like a drop in a bucket. They are regarded as dust on the scales. He weighs the islands as though they were fine dust. Lebanon is not sufficient for altar fires, nor its animals enough for burnt offerings. Before him all the nations are as nothing. They are regarded by him as worthless, less than nothing. I love all these rhetorical questions and all these things that, if you were reading this by yourself, you would just take time to think, wow, he can measure the seas in the hollow of his hand. He can measure the heavens, the galaxies by the breadth of his hand. You would just sit in awe in the greatness and the majesty of who God is. And wow. He considers the islands as fine dust. I just love these mental pictures that this passage paints for us. And then he references in 16 about how Lebanon is not sufficient for altar fires. And so you probably Lebanon, what does Lebanon mean? And so Lebanon was known back then for its beautiful, beautiful forests. It's the lumber from Lebanon was used to build the original temple in Jerusalem for the Lord. So it is the primo, the best trees one could find. And so just think maybe you have a forest or a piece of nature that is just beautiful. So my brain, I think of the redwood forest up in Northern California. They're just huge, beautiful trees. And I'm just man, but even the lumber from there is not worthy of glorifying God. That's just amazing. So he is just incomparable to anything in creation. 18 through 20, he goes on to talk about idols and about how idols are crafted by man and about how they are really worthless. And next week we're going to dive into another passage about idols, so I won't spend a lot of time there. But again, he's just saying idols are just things made by men, there's nothing behind them. And then 21 through 24, again, he talks about just the greatness of God, about how people are like grasshoppers and how the Lord is enthroned and ruling over all the nations of the world, but that God is in control of everything. I had a lot of fun with this passage. It's man, this is such a cool passage. 25 through 26, he uses a lot of imagery and illustrations to paint these pictures. And so 25, to whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these things? So just picture in your mind, it's nighttime. You just see the stars. Maybe if it's dark enough, you see the Milky Way galaxy. And he's saying, lift up your eyes. Who created these things? Who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name because of his great power and mighty strength? Not one of them is missing. So just paint the picture in your mind. The sun is setting. You begin to see one star appear, another star appear. That is the Lord calling out the starry host name by name. And he does not forget one. How big, how great, how awesome is our God that he knows all the stars in the galaxies. He is over all of creation. He is completely unique. So if he knows all this stuff, of course he knows what's going on in our lives. Of course he knows what's going on in the world. He will not forget about us. He is fully aware. He is all-knowing. He is all-powerful. He is unique, one of a kind. And I was trying to think of what else is unique? What else is one of a kind? Ryan and I were brainstorming, throwing back and forth ideas. And my brain immediately went to people will sometimes be like, oh, I found this potato that looks like Mother Teresa. Or like this piece of toast, like there's Elvis. Like Elvis is in this piece of toast. And I'm like, what's unique? So I Google unique potato chips. I don't know why my brain went there, but it did. And would you know, on eBay, people are selling heart-shaped potato chips. One was valued at $25,000. Who would pay $25,000 for a heart-shaped potato when there are 5 or 6 others listed there too? It's not unique, guys. It's just a potato chip. But we're brainstorming and we're animals that live in a unique condition or ecosystems, they're kind of unique, they're one of a kind, but they are, but then there's many of them. And like humans, yes, we are all unique, one-of-a-kind people, but there's billions of humans on this planet. And we couldn't come up with just one thing. And I'd also think about collector's items. Whether you're collecting coins or stamps, it's things that make them unique or one-of-a-kind are often because they're misprinted. They're flawed in some way. And I found this one baseball card. It's a Frank Thomas baseball card that was printed where it didn't have his name listed on it. That's super rare. Only a few of them exist. But again, there's a few of them. We could not think of just something that is strictly unique, one of a kind. And if it was, it's because it's flawed or broken. And we think our God, he's not unique because of his brokenness or he's flawed. No, he is unique in his perfection. He is unique because he created everything. He is over everything. And just how awesome is that? So I think the application is we can have hope and trust in the Lord because he is incomparable. There's no one like him. He has no equal. And I would encourage you guys this week, read through 12 through 26. Just marvel at the Lord of who he is. That he considers the nations as dust. He is so great and powerful, and that we can rest in him and who he is and what he has done. We can just glorify him. And then thirdly, we have hope because the Lord strengthens those without hope. How gracious is he that even in our weakness, in the moments when we are just not doing well, he's turn to me. I will help you. I am here to walk with life through you. And again, the Israelites, they're struggling and they're angry with the Lord. 27 talks about how, Isaiah saying, why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say my way is hidden from the Lord? They're upset with the Lord. They're not blaming him for what's happened, but they're just Lord, you've always shown up before. You've always been there to help us. They call back to the Exodus, they got them out of Egypt. They got them through the Red Sea. The Lord has always been there. And they're Lord, where are you now? Why have you not shown up again? I think, can we relate with that? Sometimes we're Lord, where are you? I really need you right here and right now. And it's always that nagging question of why do bad things happen? Why is there all these bad things in the world? There's never a good reason. There's never anything that really gives us peace. Sometimes things happen because of our own sinfulness, our weakness, our laziness that causes situations to arise. Also, we live in a fallen world. Creation is broken. And that's why we have, earthquakes and fires and tornadoes and hurricanes and all of these things. It's because it's the pains of the world because of the fall. And also, sometimes God allows certain things to happen in our lives for his plan and purposes, and we may never have true peace or understanding about why that has happened. But hopefully that leads us to put our trust in him. Because I bet the Israelites living in exile, looking back at the Lord, are Lord, like what's going to happen? It's like they want to see the promises fulfilled. But as Ryan said last week, like they're in exile for 70 years, so that's a full generation. So for those that were living in Israel and then were removed from Israel, they won't see the fulfillment of the Lord bringing them back. And I think that can be a hard truth for us to really accept. We might go through pains and sufferings, and we may not know the reason why. But maybe our children will. Maybe the people in this room may know after we move on. And it's hard to have the bigger picture of the Lord and how he works and how he moves and why he allows certain things to happen. But I can guarantee you there's always a purpose. We just may not see it. But hopefully we can have trust that he will continue to be with us. And that's what we have in 29 through 31. 29, he says, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. So if you ever think that you're not strong enough or you're not, you don't have enough faith, like that's okay. You turn to the Lord. He's the one that will then give you that strength. He will give you that faith to endure. He says in 30, even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. He's saying everybody's going to go through difficulties at some point in their lives. Everybody's going to get tired no matter how much you exercise and are in shape. Like you're going to run out of steam at some point. He's saying like everybody is going to need help. Everybody will need help at some time. And 31, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. So it's all about what do we do in those seasons of trial, the seasons of testing. Do we try to endure on our own, or do we have our hope in the Lord? Because if our hope is in the Lord, he will renew our strength. He will allow us to persevere well. And not only persevere, like the end, he continues, they will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I don't think that's just getting by. I don't think you just get on by soaring on the wings of eagles. Like, that seems pretty epic to me. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings, if you've ever seen that. Anyway, because they're on eagles at some point. It's pretty epic at the end. Anyway, I wasn't going to go there. But so we just get this energy, we get this power when we're leaning on the Lord. And so, our lives might be going up and down, just chaotic. But if we lean on the Lord and our hope is there, we will have a lot smoother sailing. We can live our lives well despite what our circumstances might be. It's like, life can be rough. Life can be great. But if we're trusting on the Lord, he will allow us to endure and persevere well. And it'll allow us to then be sharing that testimony. And don't know if you guys have ever had one of these. There's a lot of meal boxes these days, like HelloFresh or Every Plate. But like you subscribe to it, and then they'll send you a box with all the food you need to cook it. And all they expect for you to have is like the typical basic things, some pots and pans, olive oil, butter, salt, pepper. They give you everything else. You just have to have the basics, and they provide the rest for you. Like, they're very nice. They are very convenient. Abby and I have used them a couple times when we found some good deals, but they're great. And I think of like our faith. When we look at what the Lord provides and what it takes for us to receive that, it's like we really don't have that much to give. That bare minimum, that salt, pepper, olive oil. We should have that little bit we have to give to submit to the Lord. And he provides salvation, forgiveness of sins, grace, mercy. He gives us the Holy Spirit to dwell within us. He gives us eternal life that we'll be able to spend with him in heaven. So we look at all that like, okay, we got to trust in the Lord. We have to have faith, and we need to lay down our lives, which I don't want to minimize that. Like, that can be a big thing, giving up our hopes, dreams, desires, like, Lord, where do you want me to go? But then when you look at what we get in return, wow. It's amazing. And so we can have this great hope in the Lord. And I found this definition of hope when I was going through my studies, and it says, this hope is an active dependence on God that patiently awaits his timing with confident expectation. I think many times when I think of the word hope, I think it's more passive. It's like, yeah, I just let it go, and God's got the rest. And I can just sit on my couch, and he will take care of it. But that's not how this author described it. He's like, no, it's an active dependence. I'm just trying to think of ways to describe, like, what is an active dependence? Where it's like you depend on somebody else, but you are also playing a part with it at the same time. And I think it means that we're trusting God with something for him to move or to do something else. And while we're waiting, we are so confident that he's going to come through and fulfill it, and we begin to live it out before it's fully manifested. So we need to have this active dependence where we're not constantly trying to take it back, where we're not trying to be like, okay, God, I'm going to let go with this hand, but I'm still going to hold on tight with this other hand. He's like, I'm trusting you, but not completely. But no, we need to totally let it go and to trust him. And then that kicker word, we patiently await his timing. And those are always moments of where I get anxious, where I'm like, all right, God, just show up now. I want it now. But he's like, no, just wait. We can have great confidence that he will show up, that he will fulfill exactly what we need. It may not be what we want, it may not be how we would expect it to happen, but he will show up with what we need. So just ask you, now, how can you actively put your hope in God? Sometimes maybe we get caught, like this is an example, like we get caught up in finances, and so when we want to take it into our own hands, like we're just going to work that overtime, we're going to continue to work harder, maybe we'll get a side job to help make ends meet, and we want to hustle, and try to have that financial security, which that's a good thing to pursue, but sometimes it comes at other sacrifices. Is that what God really wants us to do, or does he want us to trust him more and put our hope in him? So are there things in life where we're trying to compensate for fear or insecurity we have, when in reality maybe we need to step back and seek the Lord more? Can you trust him? Are you confident that he will show up and help? Again, I just imagine the Israelites, they're in exile, like they are worried and just confused, and Isaiah's telling them, like, have hope, rest in the Lord. And I just can't imagine going through that experience and what they might be dealing with and struggling with, but just to continue to persevere and have that hope in the Lord. And again, I just want to have that quote again, like, this hope is an active dependence on God that patiently awaits his timing with confident expectation.